I wanted to showcase all of the incredible waifus that I've accumulated over the course of my time playing Destiny Child, but at the same time, I'm a little bit scared given the physical appearance of some of them. Maybe I'll try and sneak a few in here and there throughout the video and see if I can get away with it. So, admittedly, going into this, I really did not expect this to be a replacement for your girlfriend. When I booted it up for the first time, my wife, Mrs. Stix, she looked over at me, she stared at me for what seemed like an eternity, and she asked me what I was playing. I stared right back at her, and then again at my phone, and then again back at her, and honestly, I had no idea. After playing for 30 minutes, I definitely had an idea. This is the kind of game that you hide from your significant other, that you hide from your friends, that you hide from your family, or that you say you accidentally downloaded thinking it was one of the albums from back when Beyonce was part of that girl group. Easy mistake to make, and not nearly as embarrassing. Hey, my name is Stix, and welcome back to another episode of Worst Gacha Ever, a video series where we play through every single gacha game and proceed to analyze what the game does right and what it does wrong, based off of my experience with it over a period of time. If you enjoyed this series, make sure to like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell notification button because YouTube told me that if you don't, well, you'll miss out on plot like this, and nobody wants to miss out on that. Oh, and make sure to check out the last episode in this series at the end of the video. Before we go any further though, I do want to give a quick shout out to all of our patrons over on Patreon. While this channel is technically monetized due to the nature of a lot of the content, Patreon allows for me to at least make something off of these videos, so kudos guys, you guys rock. So Destiny Child is the first vertical gacha game that I have played for this channel. Admittedly, I do not have much experience with them. They always kind of felt weird. It's like watching a vertical movie as opposed to a widescreen one, you know? It feels wrong until you start playing it, and then out of nowhere, you're engaged, you're enthralled, and you just can't put your phone down. Couple that with the fact that the game literally threw 11,000 stamina at me upon downloading the game, and realistically, I've had absolutely no reason to put this game down. Well, okay, that's a lie. I've left the game auto-grinding stages I've completed for hours each day to attempt to get resources to obtain XP for level ups. I mean, sure, I made excessive use of exploration missions to aid in the XP grind, but I just felt like if I wasn't auto-grinding, then I was wasting my time. Destiny Child is your typical gacha RPG with a very mature twist. You take on the role of some random dude who, I don't know, seems kind of emo, uninterested in everything going on. You know, the literal definition of a millennial. When a super hot succubus comes along, Mona, who tasks you with becoming the Archfiend, the ruler of the infernal realm, which, in my opinion at least, beats the 9-to-5 job you work at the supermarket. Yeah, we're really playing that guy. See, if I were some kid working at a convenience store and I was presented with the opportunity for greatness of this magnitude, I can say with utmost certainty that I would be immediately interested. Leading a demon army of some of the hottest waifus in existence, you would have to be crazy to turn that down. And thus we're thrown into a fight that we didn't really want to take part in, or at least I don't think we did. Did we want to take part? Oh God. Okay, so admittedly, I may have skipped a little bit of the intro, but you can't hold that against me. I had more important things to do. Now, this is where the game begins. This is a traditional RPG. It has a very, very deep narrative. A lot of it could honestly be condensed, but one thing I've learned from gacha games is that there are two ways developers craft their stories. One, the game is barren. There is no story, there is no world building. You exist solely to let the game kill monsters for you for absolutely no purpose, or none that you're actively made aware of. And then number two, the game is filled with so much story that if you don't skip some of it, you'll never actually be able to play the game. This is present in Destiny Child, in Arknights, in Azure Lane, all of which are actually incredibly fun games, but packed with so much story, you'll often find yourself skipping parts against your better judgment. As a traditional RPG, the game makes use of a familiar type of progression. You're presented with a world filled with chapters. Each chapter denotes a certain part of the story with characters, levels, and enemies specific to that story. Each chapter has a variety of different levels, with every level having their own unique sub-levels to conquer. As an example, Chapter 4 might have 8 total levels. Typically, you do those 8 levels and then you would progress to Chapter 5. In Destiny Child, you select one of those levels and there are 4 sub-levels to engage in, 3 of which are normal encounters consisting of 3 waves of enemies, and then the final encounter being a larger scale boss fight. Meaning typically, there are upwards of 30 to 40 fights with 3 waves per fight to clear before moving on to the next chapter. Admittedly, this can get repetitious, especially when encounters don't seem to provide any real spike in difficulty or challenge, or at least none that I experienced. Thankfully, auto combat is present, and honestly, I don't typically praise auto combat in games, but I feel like with the addition of multiplying the speed of the game by 3 times, this is all but a necessity for this game. This makes an otherwise at times arduous grind that much easier to tolerate, especially given how long you've spent grinding and regrinding content. Speaking of, there are over 300 unique units that you can recruit currently. Each character has their own unique look, their own personality, and selection of abilities that can drastically alter the course of battle. Yes, they are divided up into varying categories based off of their rarity, but as we know, sometimes lower rarity heroes are just better than their higher rarity hero counterparts. Each unit has 5 different elemental affinities, with strengths and weaknesses corresponding to their elements. As an example, fire is good against wood, water against fire, wood against water, and so on. Therefore, while it's effective to level a select group of units, much like I did, it's much more beneficial to instead level a surplus of different heroes to take advantage of the elemental system present. If you have an elemental advantage, you'll deal 25% more damage with each attack, as opposed to dealing 20% less damage due to being at an elemental disadvantage. Then there are class archetypes: attackers, who are fast and strong but have low defense; defenders, which function the exact opposite; supporters, who buff their allies; debuffers, who, much like defenders, do the exact opposite; healers, that keep your group in the fight; and combined units that you sacrifice for the greater good of your better waifus and husbandos. You can actually do quite a bit with your units. You level them either via exploration, questing, or sacrificing other units. You can level up their skills, making them more powerful. You can awaken them, unlocking their potential. You can uncap them, evolve them by sacrificing other units. Yeah, you do a lot of that in this game. You can equip them with gear. There are 4 slots total that I have available at level 50. Each piece of gear can be enhanced, upgrading them into something exponentially more powerful than what they were in their base form. Combat itself is fought in real time. As noted, you can turn on auto for this, or you can opt to increase the speed up to 3 times total. You'll notice that while in combat, you have a gauge towards the bottom of your screen. This gauge continues to accumulate charge, and after filling up, allows one of your units to perform a type of ultimate attack. During this ability, you'll be required to complete a QuickTime event by pressing the button at the exact moment, or if you're like me, you can let the game do it for you, as it achieves perfection 100 out of 100 times. It's almost like we're entirely unnecessary. Your units themselves appear down towards the bottom of the screen in the form of cards. They have their own HP, individual levels, gauges. When attacking, they just kind of pop out of the card and proceed to smack one of the enemies, and then they just immediately slide right on back in. It's a weird visual, honestly. Graphically, this game is absolutely stunning. The combat, the effects, and the characters that make use of those abilities are all absolutely gorgeous. The backdrops aren't bad, and honestly, they're typically just a small background with enemies placed atop them. Speaking of gorgeous things, though, have you seen some of these waifus? These characters are designed by the very same guy that did the Blade and Soul and Magna Carta games, and his style is very noticeable, as are certain physics. The characters are all incredibly varied from different regions, fantasy inspired, medieval inspired. There is a lot of inspiration taken from various different time periods, adding additional depth and personality to characters that would otherwise all seem relatively similar. Speaking of the husbandos and the waifus, the gacha system actually isn't bad at all. The current publisher provides many opportunities for players to acquire premium currency with which to purchase character pulls. On top of that, the rates for 5-star heroes are 3%, significantly higher than the 1 to 2% often found in gacha games. There are 2 different pity systems present. Pity for new banner children, where if you manage a 5-star pull, it's guaranteed to be the new child, and the mileage pity, which does not reset if you obtain a 5-star summon, if what I've read online is to be believed anyway. Outside of the main story and progression, you'll never really find yourself with a dull moment. There are more things to do in this game than I realistically know what to do with, which I will admit was very overwhelming, was a very daunting task to attempt to learn as a new player. So here's the thing. Something that I've learned playing gacha games is that the older the game, the more packed with systems and features it is. When gacha games launch, they're pretty basic. They offer a narrative, a few methods to obtain materials to upgrade your heroes, some avenues to drain your stamina. Destiny Child, we have the Forge of Hephaestus, House of Reincarnation, Devil Rumble, which is essentially a type of PvP system, which admittedly, you know, I don't tend to play PvP in gachas because my heroes are just never as powerful as the vast majority of other players are. The Adventure of Eve, which was kind of like a cool little minigame, actually. Probably the only form of direct control over a character you have in the game. The Underground, Event Dungeons, which you use to farm materials each day. Hecate's Library to relive events that you've watched before. The Scarlet Collection, the Infernal Spa, where you can creepily just stand there and stare at your waifus bathing. And I know there are plenty of you that do this. You cannot hide it from me. Don't even try. The Rebirth Labyrinth, Endless Duel, and finally Exploration, where you deploy your units on missions, where you acquire XP, you know, the norm. And yeah, I likely glossed over any number of different features. Yeah, I probably did something wrong when forming my team, leveling my waifus, but I mean, that's part of playing a new game. You make mistakes, you level the wrong characters, you equip them with the wrong gear, you end up wasting resources, but slowly over time, you will learn the mechanics of the game. You will learn from your mistakes. That's part of learning the game and honestly part of the fun. Overall, this is a very good game. Graphically, the character models are some of the most over-exaggerated yet aesthetically appealing that I have ever seen in a gacha game. The abilities look great. The combat, well, honestly, I feel like there were far too many instances where I just had to grind mindlessly, which isn't really all that appealing to me. Having real-time events adds an additional layer to an otherwise basic combat system, though, requiring a little attention if you're not playing on auto. Which, let's be real here, why wouldn't you be? There are endless amounts of activities to engage in. The narrative, while not translated perfectly, isn't half bad. The emo main character makes me want to smash my head into a wall, but other than that, I had a lot of fun. Is Destiny Child the worst gacha game of 2022? Not at all. This is actually one of the better gacha games that I've played. Definitely not the best, but definitely something that I could recommend to players that are interested in something they haven't played before. Now, if you're looking for the previous episode in the Worst Gacha Ever series, you can find that via this video right here. Or if you're looking for a list of confirmed gacha games coming this year, then this video right here.